All right, everybody, here we are again at TPUSA's AmFest 2025. We're here at the Truth and Liberty booth, front and center of all the amazing stuff that's going on here. And I am really thrilled and honored to be able to present to you this time now as I sit down with Chloe Cole and Dr. Jared Ross. Thank you so much for joining us here on Truth and Liberty, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, so our viewers know, we're all about restoring biblical values to our culture, getting believers to stand up for what's right, for truth in our culture. And there's no area that is more shocking, I think, and evident of the decline of biblical values than the whole transgender LGBT ideology, the movement, what's happening with our kids and everything else. So, Chloe, I really appreciate you coming and being willing to share your story with us today. So, if I understand correctly, you began a process of so-called transitioning, and that was from female to male. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yes, and this happened while I was still a child. I underwent puberty blocking medication. I was put on weekly doses of high injections, weekly high dose injections of testosterone, as well as a double mastectomy before I was old enough to even drive a car. And I came out of it with regret, with damage done to my body, but now I use my experience for the greater good, to honor God and His glory, to honor His will, and to protect children from going through the same thing that I did.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So can you tell me a little bit about what led up to the decision to undergo that?
So I was a bit of a tomboy growing up. I always felt like I just related a lot more to my older brothers and to the boys at school than I ever did the women in my life, in all sorts of different ways. And I'd always been different in some ways. But I never thought these things were anything other than strengths until around the time that I hit puberty, and it was like a massive shift in my life. Everything was changing. I was moving neighborhoods, I was moving schools, and I didn't really feel like I fit in everywhere and anywhere that I went. And I was searching for meaning. I was searching for a sense of identity. But I found that in this community of people that supposedly was loving and accepted people the way that they were. And I thought that I was actually not born as a girl, but I was destined to be a young man, that I was born wrong, that the only way I could fix myself was through experimental medicine. And all these ideas I was learning about through the internet it was through peer influence, seeing other children with the same struggles seemingly become happy as they move through the transition process. That sense of happiness that they seemed to display was something that I had yearned for from a very young age. And so I had been influenced into thinking that this was going to be something that would benefit me and make me who I truly supposedly was. Yeah. And this was echoed by my doctors, who, instead of challenging me, they gave in to, they focused on what I wanted rather than what I needed. And that led to me getting hurt. Their moral misjudgments have led to not just me, but countless children losing healthy parts of their bodies, having their health compromised, possibly for life, and losing their ability to experience things like bringing your own children to the world. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have children of my own, but it was realizing that I had a maternal instinct, and I wanted to become a mother, and I wanted to defend the next generation, that led to me stopping my own transition.
Wow, that's quite a statement right there. There's so much in there I would love to go into, but let me ask where your parents were in the process. Can you talk about that?
My mom and dad, I think they were very sane about it, actually. They were very sensible. They never believed I was transgender. They never wanted me to go down this path, but they were told that there was no other choice, and they were threatened with my life by the doctors. They were told I would kill myself if we weren't intervening as early as possible.
Wow.
And this is the lie that doctors use to coerce parents, to manipulate them into signing off on this.
Wow. So that must have been really scary for your mom and dad to hear that.
It was horrific. They heard it several times.
Had you ever threatened suicide or attempted
No.
suicide?
I was not anywhere near suicidal until after this began.
Yeah.
And especially when I realized how much I regretted this and how much damage it was causing to my body.
Well, let me just pause for just a second and ask you a question, Dr. Ross. Does the modern, transgender therapy and treatment, all of that, does it lower suicide rates amongst teens that are gender confused, or does it do the opposite?
Yeah, this is a major myth that we've spent a lot of time combating, that parents who hesitate sending their children down this path are blackmailed. And we often hear the lie, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? And it's incredibly harmful, and it's incredibly false as well.
Yeah.
We have good data out of the US, out of the UK, and out of Sweden that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones don't improve mental health and don't decrease suicidality. And actually, we have some data out of Europe that shows that cross-sex hormones, or really wrong sex hormones, and these surgeries actually worsen mental health. There's needs to be a lot more research done in this area. But part of the problem is that when we have a gender confused or gender distressed child, and we immediately send them down this path of puberty blockers, wrong sex hormones, and mutilative sterilizing surgeries that permanently destroy sexual and bodily function, that we neglect all of those actual underlying mental health issues that we have treatments for. So instead of actually addressing the autism spectrum disorder, addressing and treating depression, anxiety, eating disorders, acknowledging the PTSD from a history of physical or sexual abuse, instead we neglect all of that. We put that in the closet, and we send the child down this pathway supposedly full of roses, where we mutilate and maim them. And so even if the procedures themselves, we know, do all this harm, this physical and mental harm, but simply neglecting their serious underlying mental health issues has its own harm. Those issues fester and worsen. And so this is a myth that we really love to dispel. We hear it so much from the other side that pushes these procedures and medications for their own ideological and financial enrichment, and we really need to push back on this.
Well, that's amazing. Chloe, I want to come back to you and get the rest of your story in a minute, but if I can have you hold the mic, I got one more question here. Why are they doing this, Dr. Ross? Why are they threatening parents? Why are they not referring their patients for the kind of help that they need to overcome the gender confusion or distress, as you call it, instead rushing them into this so-called transition?
This is the only area of medicine where we are required to affirm, and that's on the medical side and the mental health side. And it's also the only area of medicine where we provide medical treatment based on the patient's demands. Medicine is not a buffet. You don't come up and take some orange chicken and maybe beef with broccoli, and I'm going to skip the fried rice today. That is what this area, and you can't even call it medicine, because we're not healing. We're actually causing harm. But that's what this is. It's on demand. Oh, I want my breasts removed, but I want to. I don't want any surgery on my genitals, or I want to take testosterone, and we don't do that in any sensible medical or mental health practice. A patient comes in and says, I'm struggling with this. I think I'm a boy. And then we start, as any good mental health professional does, well, why do you feel that way? We start examining that. If someone comes in and says, I want to get a divorce, we don't say, here's the best divorce attorney in town. No, we want to examine and understand what's going on, get to the root cause. But instead, we fast track these patients. We affirm their delusions. These are clearly delusions, right? If a young girl, if Chloe came in and said, I'm morbidly obese, I need to lose weight, put me on Ozempic, and I want a gastric bypass. We would say, no, that's not reality. We don't treat, when your mind and your body don't equate, we treat the mind. The mind is malleable. The mind can change. The body can. And so we treat the mind. We also treat reality. We don't treat delusions. We don't entertain delusions or hallucinations. When I have someone come into the ER who's suffering from a psychotic break or high on drugs and says, I'm Jesus, or comes in and says, the CIA is tracking me. I don't entertain that. I don't cut open their arm to take the so-called tracking chip out. I say, no, you're experiencing a severe crisis. And going back to the suicidality argument, if someone is acutely suicidal, we need to treat the suicidality. We're not going to start doing surgery on someone. What if we had a woman come in and say, I want breast implants. If you don't give me breast implants today, I'm going to kill myself. Would we kowtow to that? What if a criminal said, well, if you put me in jail, I'm going to kill it would just, not only would it run amok of our entire medical system, but our entire society would fall apart. And again, the literature doesn't back up that this actually causes suicidality in the first place. I think this is imprinted on these children by social media, by activists who say, go to your doctor, go to your psychiatrist, your psychologist, and tell them you're suicidal, and you'll get fast-tracked onto these procedures.
Yeah. Well, and this question is for both of you, really, I suppose, but the gender movement, the trans movement, it seems to want to force all of society to buy into the delusion. We're required in Colorado, where we're from, they just passed a law saying it was a violation of civil rights if you don't use the preferred pronoun in the opposite sex name that someone wants. You have to go along with their, and then they, to make it even crazier, they say, now that's affirming. Well, you're not affirming, are you? You're going along, you're affirming their delusion, but you're affirming their delusion.
Reality, exactly. Yeah. We live in reality.
Yeah.
And this is a slippery slope towards cultural Marxism. This is the radical left trying to impose socialism and communism into the US. And I know that might sound like a conspiracy theory, but the idea is that if we can't agree on basic reality, basic biology, what is a woman, what is a man, that leads to chaos, and chaos is a perfect opportunity to upend an entire society. And so I know it sounds, like a conspiracy theory to say this is a step towards Marxism, but it really is a step to disrupt our basic understanding of society. You see this in the schools with math, that 2 + 2 no longer equals 4. There's no objective right answer.
Yeah, there's no truth.
There's no truth. It's your truth, my truth, that we're destroying objective reality, and instead everything is based on individual perception, and that's just not what life is.
Yeah. So Chloe, let's pick back up with you and your story. So you had this really aggressive trans medical treatment, including, if I'm correct, you had a double mastectomy.
Yes.
And how did your body respond to these things? How did it react? What was that all like?
So the doctors who peddle this would like you to think that it's reversible. Not a single part of it is. All 3 of the treatments I was put on have left me with lasting complications, with joint pain, with pelvic pain. I don't know about the future of my fertility or my reproductive health, or even the state it's in right now. And obviously I have no breast with which I can feed my future children if I'm able to have any. And all of this has been incredibly devastating, but in detransitioning, I have healed a lot, both physiologically and spiritually and emotionally. And it's something that has brought me infinitely more purpose than the initial transition ever has, because I'm embracing reality. I'm radically accepting the things that I cannot change, and accepting that I've been created this way for a reason, that God knows His plan. I may not know it, but all I can do is to trust in that and to follow it.
Yeah. So, in thinking about this, it seems like that young people or people in general, they get imprinted in their heart and in their mind an image or a perception of this is what an acceptable boy is, this is what an acceptable girl is, and I don't measure up, I don't meet these things, or I'm different in these ways, but that's not truth, is it?
No, I mean, especially growing up in today's image-oriented and media-crazed age, it's difficult. There's so many different figures who you feel like you might never match up to. For girls, these different models and these women that they see on social media, and everybody, regardless of sex, everybody's posting their best self. And that's all that we see out of their lives. And when we're constantly seeing the best out of everybody's lives, we're always comparing ourselves and feeling like we can't stack ourselves up to that. And it can be easy to feel like I'm not enough as a man, or I'm not enough as a woman, and I'm never going to be, so I need to change. But no, there's only two sexes, but there's a million different ways that you can be yourself. And life is full of ups and downs. And when you're building your identity, it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be painful, but building an identity is, in a sense, like building muscle. It's supposed to hurt, and you need to struggle in order to get better.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the greatest messages that I could give to my generation, to anybody who's young and struggling.
So tell me this, if you don't mind, what role did faith in God play in the spiritual and mental transformation that you've undergone in the last, how long has it been since you started to detransition?
It's been almost 5 years now.
Wow.
I was 16, I'm 21 now, and it didn't come until a little bit later in my life, in my detransition, when I started speaking out publicly. I grew up pretty much an atheist. I was always science first, and even now, as strong as I am, as much as I'm building my faith, I love science. I think the two go together. It's the study of God's creation and also how we can use it to our means, which I think is often where we go wrong, and that's exactly what's led to this happening in the first place. But I believed in science so much, it led to me living a lie. And I had to learn to let go of biases that I had before. I had to let go of only wanting to believe in what I could see right in front of me, and understand that there are things out there that we as human beings can never directly perceive, but we have to trust in order to, I think, live a wholesome life.
Yeah.
And we have to trust, because our lives can be so painful, and because we are so imperfect just as human beings, in the God who created us in order to guide us and to live out our lives in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say that someone's watching our interview here and they're struggling in the area of feeling inadequate as a male or as a female, and confused about who they really are. What words would you give them? What encouragement could you share with them?
There's another way out. And if you're already in it, it's never too late. No matter how far you've gone. Whether you start on hormones, whether you've already been on any of the drugs, or you've had surgery to remove or add breast or even take away your genitalia, it is never too late for you. Every detransition looks different. Not everybody can expect the same mileage, but no matter what you've lost, you can still be whole. I didn't know that detransitioning was a thing until it happened to me. I didn't know that there was a word for it until months afterward. But there is hope in coming back out of it. There is a life for you out of this. So keep trusting in that, and keep looking to God, keep looking to reality, and know that one day things are going to be much better than they are. Things are going to be much better than they are now.
So I don't want to get too personal or anything like that, but in the process, you undergo the surgery, you're on the hormones and all of this sort of thing. How did you come to a point of regret or realizing, hey, I've made a wrong decision here. And I think you would even say you were lied to and this sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about that journey a little bit and how you came to that choice.
The surgery was the biggest change in that led to me realizing that it was a mistake. I think because of how horrific it was to deal with, but also because I was starting to get a little bit older. And I was 15, going on 16, thinking about my future, thinking about whether I'd want to have kids. I'd never had a first kiss yet, so I wondered what's marriage going to be like? Am I going to want to build a family one day? How am I going to continue the legacy of my family? And it was this epiphany that I wanted to become a mom.
Wow.
That was the single biggest thing that led me back out of it.
That's awesome. So what'd you do? You say to mom and dad, hey, I wish I hadn't done this?
I told them about it. I went cold turkey off the drugs.
Wow.
And I started to grow my hair out again. I dug out some of my old clothes from the closet and put them on, even though they were ill-fitting, because I wanted to feel like myself again.
Yeah.
And it was a hard road back. People didn't take me seriously for a long time because I didn't look like myself. But I fought hard to get to the point that I could, to where I'm at today.
Did you have to change to new doctors to help you through, or how did that go?
I've tried.
Yeah.
I have gone back to my doctors who have done this to me. And I have a new healthcare provider now, and it's still hard to get any treatment, but that's what I'm working for, because I'm not the only one.
Right.
There are so many people out there who are in the same situation,
Really?
and I want to ensure that there is going to be a pathway created for children and for young people out of this.
Yeah. So, any advice to moms and dads out there who have kids who are struggling with gender identity? What can they do to affirm their God-given gender as opposed to going the leftist route of affirming their delusion?
Never give up on your child, no matter where your relationship with them is at. Stay calm, stay collected, do your due diligence, and do not ever give in to the lie in any capacity. And always preface it with how much you love them, with looking out for them. And at the end of the day, what you should be working towards is not just their well-being, but also your own relationship with them. See where they're at. Extend the olive branch. And make it so that you are somebody who they can trust to talk to about anything, even if you don't see eye to eye. I think that's what a lot of these children are missing. They want to be able to trust in their parents. They want to be able to have a stable relationship. And that is the single greatest thing that you can give your child.
You know, I think some parents, when your child is going through a crisis or whatever, and you are afraid that if you take a hard stand on what you believe to be true, that the child may reject you, may leave the home, may whatever. In today's world, they may call the police or protective services or whatever, and you could lose your child in the process. But again, your message to parents is be strong, don't give in to the lie, even in those situations.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because even if they've been taken from you, you still have a responsibility to fight for them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I've seen miracles, not just in my own life, but in the lives of people who I've connected to, who have had to deal with this in more ways than one. I have met many mothers, many fathers, who thought that all hope was lost, and then their children were able to come back in some way or another.
Yeah.
And there's always hope. There always is hope, and that
amazing.
is why it's important for us to remain in prayer.
Dr. Ross, let me switch back to you. This whole subject is just tragic and fascinating all at the same time. I'd like to ask if you could just comment on the biology of this whole issue, where the left wants us to, again, on the whole delusion thing, we're supposed to call someone a male, even if they're biologically a female, solely based on, well, really, I mean, solely based on what they want, whether they've undergone transition. But on the subject of transition, is it possible to actually take someone from being a male to make them a biological female and vice versa? Or is it just a matter of cosmetics?
It's all cosmetic. It's a great question. Even the idea of human gender was pushed starting in the 60s and 70s. Gender is a term that's applied to language. Humans and mammals have biological sex, male and female, and all mammals only have two sex. But we censor ourselves because we conflate biological sex with sexual intercourse, and so we self-censor and use the word gender instead. And the radical left took this as an opportunity to differentiate between sex and gender, to say gender's in your mind, gender is whatever you make of it, gender is a spectrum. But the idea of humans having gender is a very new idea, and I think thankfully falling out of favor. Humans and all mammals have biological sex. There's two sexes, male and female. Sex is determined at conception and identified at birth, and today often identified before birth on an ultrasound. That is encoded in the DNA of every cell in our body, and it is unchangeable. No amount of wrong sex hormones, puberty blockers, cosmetic surgeries will ever change that fact. And what the left is pushing as a supposedly progressive ideology is actually incredibly regressive when you think about it. The idea that you can't be a tomboy, that you can't be a sissy boy, that if you don't comport to social norms, if you aren't average, if you have interests or proclivities that are not shared by the majority of society, that we can't simply say, oh, she's different, he's different. Maybe it's even a phase with children and adolescents especially, as we're changing. Instead, what we have to do is permanently maim, mutilate, and sterilize that child. I mean, that is so incredibly regressive because of their interests, because of how they behave. So this is simply a cosmetic exercise, and some of the cosmetic surgeons even say that this really defies cosmetic surgery, because you're attempting to create organs that don't exist, that don't function. And so there's no sexual function here, there's no physiological function. This is just attempting to take a boy and make him look like a girl, or a girl and make her look like a boy. It will never change who he or she is. And it's just a complete perversion of what medicine is. Chloe and I work with Do No Harm, and our organization's name is no accident. It comes from the Hippocratic Oath that all doctors take. In Latin, it's primum non nocere. First, do no harm. And what we're doing to these children who are already suffering, we are causing them even more suffering, lifelong, irreversible suffering, instead of addressing and treating and sometimes curing these mental ailments that they're suffering with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we think, sex, well, okay, that's going to be your genitals, and for women it's going to be their breasts, and if we can just make those change, then we've changed the sex. But sex actually has, you tell me, how many biological differences there are between male and female. It manifests in hundreds of ways, doesn't it? Especially in the brain and in the bones and muscles and everything.
Yes, it's on all levels. It's not just, I mean, it's defined in the chromosomes and by our reproductive capacity, and even for people that aren't fertile, that's a disorder, right? Infertility is a disorder, and not to denigrate those people at all. They can be wonderful people, but that is an unfortunate disorder, and we can look at that being a disorder because in order to have survival of the species, we need to reproduce. And so if you're born without the ability to reproduce, that is inherently a disorder. Again, that doesn't make them of any less worth. But we have to realize that all humans are either male or female, and there may be males or females that don't have reproductive capacity, unfortunately. But that goes from the gametes, the reproductive, whether they're small gametes, sperm, or large gametes, ova or eggs. That's the genital organs, the reproductive organs, the chest. But then we also talk about secondary sexual characteristics. That's the facial structure. That's the chest and the shoulder width, the ribs. The hips, the female and male pelvis are very different. The length of the legs. I mean, we have all of these secondary sexual characteristics, and you can do surgeries all day long. You can give hormones all day long. You can put in implants, take off body parts. But at the end of the day, you're never going to change the fact that that person is either a male or a female, and those chromosomes, that XY or XX, is in every single cell of that person's body.
Well, comment, if you will, on, I want to go back to something we touched on a little at the beginning, but it is, how did the medical profession come under the dominion of this insane ideology? Because I call it transgender insanity. How did that happen? We used to look to doctors as sort of protectors and guardians, and they would help us make right choices and help us get healthy. But now they become tools of some political left-wing craziness. How did that happen?
Yes, this really started in Europe in the 40s, out of the radical gay movement, and that's where we kind of first saw this creation of this gender identity, transsexualism. And when we saw, and this was really men, this was men who had struggled in a masculine role. These were primarily men in their 40s or 50s who had married, had kids, divorced, and then had this strong desire to be a woman. And it's something that we don't talk enough about. It's called autogynephilia. It's a paraphilia, or a sexual fetish, where these men want to fulfill the societal and sexual role of a woman. And there were some European researchers who were willing to indulge these sexual fetishes and dignify them with medical responses instead of addressing these paraphilias as a mental health issue. And as these men were followed, and as this trickled across the pond to the US and the rest of the developed world, we saw that these men often became more unhappy, that they were not able to fulfill or live fulfilling lives as females because they didn't look like women. They didn't talk like women. They had deep voices and masculine bodies and facial hair, even if they waxed or lasered it off. And so there were some Dutch researchers in the 90s that said, wait, maybe if we can identify these men as children before they go through puberty, figure out which of these boys are going to grow up to have this intense distress, we can block their puberty, give them estrogen, and do these surgeries on them before they masculinize, before they go through puberty, and as a blank canvas of a child. And we can question the intentions of these researchers, but they at least set about to study their patients and to follow them longitudinally. And what they realized 20 years later is that they couldn't reliably identify who these people were, which kids were simply going through a phase, which of these kids would just grow up to be sex role non-conforming or same-sex attracted. And that even when they did do all of these procedures early on, they never grew up to be happier and live fulfilling lives. And so they sent out this alert. They said, this doesn't work. We're calling off the experiment. But unfortunately, this idea of mutilating and maiming children because of these passing phases, this confusion, these delusions, had left the Netherlands and had gone to Germany and England and the US and Canada. And we didn't take note that this was a failed experiment, a brutal experiment that should never have happened, but that this was failed, and there was clearly now data saying that this doesn't work. But instead, we doubled down, and especially during the COVID era lockdowns, where we had an increase in mental illness, isolation, depression, anxiety, more kids sitting in front of screens, social media, and all of this indoctrination, grooming. We saw a massive increase in 2020 and 2021 of kids going down this irreversible pathway.
Yeah, wow, amazing. Amazing. So Do No Harm is an organization that you're part of, I guess. Can you tell us more about your role and the organization?
Yes, so I'm a senior fellow at Do No Harm. We are a healthcare watchdog organization that aims to remove woke identity politics from medicine and restore faith into our healthcare system. We work on three angles. One is protecting children from radical gender ideology and from the transgender cult. We also work to restore merit in healthcare and medicine, and we do that by combating racist DEI policies in medical school admissions, in medical research, and the provisioning of healthcare. And we're also addressing the rising tide of anti-Semitism in medicine, which really extends beyond hatred against us Jews, but really Christians are next on that. And it's really an assault on our American Judeo-Christian values rooted in the Old Testament, individual liberties and freedoms. And so we're very active on that. We have our Center for Accountability in Medicine, which we just launched, which is focusing on some of these issues. But it's a great organization. I encourage your viewers to check us out and join. There's no charge to join. And our website, if I can pitch
Please
it,
do.
it's at donoharmmedicine.org, donoharmmedicine.org.
Excellent. Wow, that's amazing. So just if you could, comment about the rise of anti-Semitism in medicine. I think we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism in many ways, but I had not heard about it in the field of medicine. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we have a major physician shortage in the U.S. that's been going on for many years. We haven't expanded residency programs, and we can talk about funding issues and all kinds of reasons for that. I mean, we have nursing shortages as well. But what we're doing is we're importing doctors into the US. And many of these doctors are coming from the Arab world, where they believe or have been led to believe to have these very anti-Semitic sentiments, to believe that Jews are a threat, to believe that Jews are evil. Even we see these beliefs that Jews have horns, are born with horns that are removed at birth.
Doctors who believe that.
Crazy, right?
Yes.
And so this is infiltrating our medical system. And healthcare is an area where you have to have complete trust in, if you have a surgeon and an anesthesiologist putting you under in the operating room, that's the ultimate submission, right? You're completely unconscious and you're trusting your body and your life in their hands. And so we can't have a system where we have doubt about the inner feelings of our doctors, whether our doctors harbor hatred towards us and towards our country. We've seen numerous patient reports of anti-Semitism all across the country, and it's really something that we need to combat before this problem gets worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chloe, let me give you the last word here, and ask you that if you could speak to the liberals out there, okay, people on a political level who feel like they're doing good by pushing this transgender ideology, what would you say to them?
If you're pushing for this ideology on children in any way, whether you're a parent teaching your kids about this, or worse, telling them that they are transgender, or if you're a teacher going behind the backs of your students' parents to teach them about it, any unaffiliated adult in their life doing so, and especially if you're a doctor or a politician who is promoting or doing these treatments to kids, you're failing them. You are setting them up for a lifetime of pain and failure. You are ignoring your basic instincts. We know how to differentiate between sexes, and I think for most people there's a sense inherently this is wrong. And even the people who do this know this. And if you continue ignoring that instinct, you're in for huge trouble. You are going to be held to account for your actions, whether it be in this life or the next.
Wow. Well, you can keep the mic. I've got my own. But very, very thankful that you stopped by Truth and Liberty today and shared your perspective and your knowledge, your experience. I'm hopeful that this whole ideology will eventually, fade into the dust bin of history, and that we'll realize how wicked it really is. And I just want to thank you, Chloe, for your courage. You could have just detransitioned and tried to live your life, but you're not doing that. You're reaching out and trying to share truth and help other people. And so may God bless you in your efforts and help you in that. And doctor, thank you for your bold stand.
Thank you so
I know
much.
that it would probably be a lot easier
Thank
for
you.
you just to practice medicine and not worry about all this stuff. So we really do appreciate it so much. Thanks for coming on Truth and Liberty.
Thank you.
All right.